The clay felt cool between Rami's fingers, yielding to pressure as he shaped the curve of a woman's shoulder blade. His studio apartment smelled of wet earth and turpentine, evening light slanting through tall windows that overlooked the old quarter of the city. Stone buildings pressed together like old friends sharing secrets, their balconies draped with jasmine that perfumed the cooling air. His phone buzzed against the work table, vibrating through sketches and dried clay dust. Noor. Can't make Thursday dinner tonight. Something came up. Sorry. Rami wiped his hands on his jeans, leaving rust-colored smears, and typed back without hesitation. Rami. Okay. Everything all right? Noor. Yes. Just need to handle something. Love you. Rami. Love you too. He set the phone down and returned to his sculpture, fingers finding the rhythm again. Thursday dinners had been their tradition for 3 years, sometimes at her place, with its organized bookshelves and soft rugs, sometimes here, among his organized chaos. They'd share stories about her accounting clients and his gallery submissions, splitting a bottle of wine, her head eventually resting on his shoulder as they planned trips they hadn't taken yet. But tonight she needed space, so he'd give it. His phone rang 20 minutes later. Tariq's name flashed across the screen. You sound calm, his brother said by way of greeting. I am calm. Noor canceled your dinner? She did. And you're not losing your mind, not checking her social media, not driving past her apartment? I laughed, pressing my thumb into the clay to define a collarbone. Why would I do any of that? Because that's what people do when their girlfriend suddenly bails. Come on, Rami, 3 years together and she just cancels? No explanation? She said something came up. I trust her. Tariq made a sound between a scoff and genuine admiration. You are either the most secure man alive or completely oblivious. Maybe both. Rami stepped back to examine his work, a figure emerging from rough stone, caught between solid and fluid. Listen, a relationship that falls apart because someone needs one evening to themselves was never stable to begin with. Love shouldn't be a cage that panics when the door opens. You've been reading too much poetry. Probably. After Tariq hung up, Rami cleaned his hands and pulled out his phone to order dinner. He chose the Lebanese place 6 blocks over, the one that made hummus so smooth it felt like silk, where the owner always added extra pita bread and a small container of pickled turnips he never charged for. Order placed, Rami opened his laptop to review photos from last week's gallery show. His sculpture of intertwined hands, one reaching up, one reaching down, had sold to a collector from Paris. The gallery wanted 3 more pieces by autumn. The doorbell rang earlier than expected. He opened it to find not the usual delivery driver, but a woman he'd never seen before, holding his food bag in front of her like a shield. She had kind eyes and rain-dampened hair, water droplets caught in the dark strands that fell past her shoulders. This is going to sound strange, but this order was delivered to my building by mistake. I live in the tower complex on Samir Street, Building 7, Apartment 4C. The address on this was clearly yours, so I thought I'd save you the hassle of calling the restaurant. Rami's mind caught on one detail. Building 7? That's where Noor lives. Noor? The woman's expression shifted slightly. Noor al-Rashid? You know her? We've shared an elevator a few times. Seems nice. She held out the bag, then paused. There's something else. This envelope was attached to the bag. It has your name on it.
Rami took the envelope, his name written in Noor's careful script across the front. Beneath it, smaller letters read, "Open only if the food arrives cold." The woman, Lila, she'd introduced herself, shifted her weight, clearly uncertain whether to leave or stay. Rain had started again, drumming against the corridor windows behind her. The food's still warm, Rami said quietly, turning the envelope over in his hands. But I think I need to read this anyway. He stepped back from the doorway. Would you mind waiting, just for a moment, in case I need a witness that I'm not losing my mind? Lila hesitated, then nodded and followed him inside. Rami set the food on his work table, pushing aside clay-stained tools and crumpled sketches. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the envelope, unfolding pages that smelled faintly of Noor's jasmine perfume. Dear Rami, by the time you read this, you'll have responded to my text with something calm and understanding. I know you. You probably said okay or no problem or something equally patient. You probably didn't interrogate me or demand explanations or make me feel guilty. That's exactly why I'm writing this. I've been lying to you. Not about loving you. That's the most honest thing in my life. But about Thursday dinners. About why sometimes I show up distracted. Why my hands shake when I set the table. Why I drink wine faster than I should. When I was 9, my father left us on a Thursday night. We were sitting at dinner. My mother had made maklube, his favorite. My sister and I were arguing about something stupid, and he just stood up, put down his fork, and said he couldn't do this anymore. He walked out while the rice was still steaming on the table. My mother tried to hold it together. She served dessert like nothing happened, but I could see her hands shaking so badly she dropped the serving spoon twice. We ate in silence, pretending. And every Thursday after that, dinner felt like we were all pretending again. Pretending we were still a family. Pretending the empty chair didn't matter. She remarried eventually, Samir, the man who actually loved her. But watching their marriage was almost worse. They'd argue during meals, voices rising, and I'd feel my chest tighten, waiting for the moment someone would stand up and leave. Even when they worked things out, even when they apologized and laughed again, I couldn't shake the feeling that dinner tables were where love came to die. Rami paused reading, his throat tight. Lila had moved to the window, giving him privacy while staying present. I know it's irrational, the letter continued. I know you're not my father. I know we're not my mother's broken marriage or her second attempt. But every Thursday night, I sit across from you and feel this weight pressing on my chest. I watch you smile and serve food and talk about your sculptures, and part of me is just waiting for the explosion, waiting for the inevitable moment when you realize I'm too damaged, too much work, too haunted by things that have nothing to do with you. Tonight, I couldn't do it again. I couldn't sit at that table and pretend I wasn't drowning. But then you texted back, okay. Just that. No anger, no accusations, no punishment disguised as concern. And something in me broke. Not us, not my love for you, but this belief I've carried for 20 years that love means chaos, that caring means volatility, that if someone doesn't fight for you loudly, they don't care at all. You didn't chase me because you don't need to control me. You didn't demand explanations because you trust me. You said, okay, because you love me enough to let me breathe. I'm sitting at Dr. Haddad's office right now, my therapist. I've been seeing her for 2 months, trying to work through this, but too afraid to tell you, because admitting I need help felt like admitting I'm broken. Tonight, I finally told her everything. About the dinners, about the panic, about loving you so much it terrifies me. She asked what changed. I told her about your text. She smiled and said, he sounds like an anchor, not a storm. I need time to work through this properly, not away from you, but toward myself. I need to stop bringing my father's ghost to our table. I need to learn that Thursday can just be Thursday. Thank you for being the kind of man who says okay and means it. I love you. I'm coming back, but first, I need to come back to myself. Always yours, Noor. Rami folded the letter carefully, his vision blurred. He stood there for a long moment, listening to rain against glass and his own steady breathing. Are you all right? Lila asked softly. He nodded, then shook his head, then laughed, a sound caught between relief and heartbreak. I think so. I think we both will be.
Rami unpacked the food with movements that felt mechanical, his mind still processing Noor's words. Layla helped without being asked, finding plates in his small kitchen area, clearing space on the work table among the clay fragments and wire armatures. You don't have to stay.
Rami said, though his voice suggested he hoped she would. I know. Layla set down 2 plates, the ceramic clicking softly against wood. But you shouldn't be alone right now. And honestly, I walked 20 minutes in the rain to deliver this. The least you can do is share the hummus. That pulled a genuine smile from him. They sat across from each other, the sculpture of the emerging woman watching from her pedestal. Rain continued its rhythm against the windows. The old quarter's lights blinked on as dusk deepened into night, golden squares of illumination in ancient stone. Can I ask you something? Layla tore a piece of pita bread, dragging it through the hummus. Why didn't you panic when she canceled? Most people would have assumed the worst. Rami considered this while chewing. My parents had this terrible relationship. My father was a lawyer, brilliant man, terrible husband. He'd interrogate my mother about everything. Where she went, who she talked to, why she smiled at the grocer. He called it love, called it caring. But it was control. Exactly. I watched her shrink over the years, apologizing for existing. When they finally divorced, she told me and Tariq that she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without someone monitoring the rhythm. He poured water into 2 glasses. I decided then that I'd never love like that. Never confuse possession with partnership. Layla nodded slowly. That takes real courage. Most people repeat what they see. What about you? Rami asked. You seem like someone who's thought about this stuff. She laughed, but there was sadness in it. I was engaged 2 years ago to this incredibly kind man named Kareem. He was a teacher, patient, thoughtful, steady. Everything I thought I wanted. What happened? I left him. Layla set down her bread, staring at her plate. 3 weeks before the wedding. Packed my things while he was at work and disappeared like a coward. Why? Because it felt too safe. Too easy. My whole life I'd watched my parents' marriage, this beautiful, dramatic, passionate thing. They'd fight and make up, scream and dance, break things and buy flowers. I thought that's what love looked like. Intensity. Unpredictability. She met Rami's eyes. Kareem was kind every single day. He never yelled, never played games. And I convinced myself that meant he didn't really love me. That real love had to hurt a little to prove it was real. Do you regret it? Every day. Layla's voice cracked slightly. I'm in therapy now too. Took me a year to even admit I'd made a mistake. My therapist keeps asking what I'm afraid of. I keep giving different answers, but they all mean the same thing. I'm afraid that I don't deserve gentleness. That if someone loves me without fireworks, it must not count. Rami reached across the table, squeezed her hand briefly. We're a matching set of disasters, aren't we? The best kind. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the city continued its evening routines, scooters buzzing through narrow streets, the call to prayer echoing from the old mosque, vendors closing their shops with the clatter of metal shutters. Across town, Noor sat in a cafe that stayed open late, the kind with mismatched furniture and walls covered in local art. Her journal lay open on the small table, pages filling with words she'd kept locked inside for years. Thursday, 7:15 p.m., she had written. Told Dr. Haddad everything today, about how I count Noor's chews when we eat, how I watch his face for signs of irritation, how I've memorized his exit routes, which door he'd use if he decided to leave, how long it would take him to pack, whether he'd look back. She asked if I'd ever seen him be cruel. I said no. She asked if he'd ever threatened to leave. I said no. She asked if he'd given me any reason not to trust him. I said no. Then you're not afraid of Rami, she said. You're afraid of being your mother, sitting at that table, watching someone leave. And she's right. God, she's right. Noor paused in her writing, watching steam curl from her mint tea. The cafe was nearly empty, just her, the owner wiping down the espresso machine, and a couple in the corner holding hands across their table. She thought about Rami's text, that simple okay that had shattered her expectations. She'd braced for questions, for hurt, for some small punishment. Instead, he'd given her exactly what she asked for: space, trust, love without conditions. I'm terrified of losing him, but I'm more terrified of poisoning what we have with my unhealed wounds. I need to learn that love can be quiet and still be real, that Thursday is just a day, that I can sit at a table without waiting for the world to end. Back in the studio, Layla helped Rami clean up the empty containers. "Thank you," he said, "for bringing the food, for staying, for understanding." "We wounded people have to stick together," she smiled, pulling on her jacket. "For what it's worth, Noor's lucky. Not everyone gets a second chance with someone who says, okay, and means it. I'm lucky too. She's brave enough to ask for what she needs." After Layla left, Rami stood at his work table, running his fingers over the clay sculpture. He thought about Noor's letter, about trust and trauma, about how love sometimes means holding on by letting go. He picked up his tools and began to work, shaping something new. Two figures not intertwined, but standing separate, leaning toward each other across empty space, connected by intention rather than grip.
Days accumulated like clay shavings on Rami's studio floor, each one carrying small moments forward. He texted Noor every morning, simple messages that required nothing in return. "Thinking of you, take your time, here when you're ready." She responded sporadically, sometimes just a heart emoji, sometimes longer messages about what she was learning in therapy, about memories surfacing like objects pulled from deep water. "Dr. Haddad has me doing this exercise," she texted on Tuesday. "Writing letters to my 9-year-old self, telling her it wasn't her fault, that she didn't make him leave. It's harder than it sounds. Rami, you're doing the hard work. I'm proud of you. Noor, I'm scared I'm too broken to fix. Rami, you're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." He meant it. He'd watched his mother heal after his father, seen how long it took to stop flinching at loud voices, to believe that kindness wasn't manipulation. Healing wasn't linear. It was messy, circular, full of steps backwards that were actually steps deeper. His sculpture grew during those waiting days. The two figures took shape, one reaching across empty space, palm open. The other standing with arms at her sides but leaning forward, face turned toward the reaching hand. Not quite touching, but the space between them felt alive, charged with possibility. "You're getting philosophical in your old age," Tariq said, visiting on Saturday. He walked around the sculpture, coffee cup in hand. "What's this one called?" "Haven't decided yet. Maybe The Gap, or Between, or something less pretentious." "How about Waiting?" Rami paused, considering. "Yeah, maybe." Tariq settled into the worn armchair Rami had salvaged from the street corner years ago. "Have you heard from her?" "Every day. She's working through things." "And you're okay with that? Just waiting?" "What else would I do? She's not punishing me. She's healing herself." Rami cleaned his sculpting knife, wiping clay from the blade. "You know what the alternative looks like? Dad never let Mom have space, never let her process anything without making it about him. She'd be upset and he'd demand she explain, justify, prove her feelings were valid. He treated her emotions like evidence in court." "Yeah," Tariq's voice went quiet. "I remember." "I won't do that to Noor. If she needs 2 weeks, or 2 months, or 2 years, I'll be here. Not because I'm a saint, but because rushing her would be choosing my comfort over her healing." "When did you get so wise?" "Therapy. Thursdays at 4. Rami grinned. "Started going after Noor's letter. Figured if she's brave enough to face her stuff, I should look at mine too." Tariq raised his coffee cup in salute. To the Samata brothers finally breaking generational curses. "I'll drink to that." Meanwhile, Layla had become an unexpected constant. She'd stop by the studio every few days, sometimes bringing coffee, sometimes just to sit and sketch in her notebook while Rami worked. She was a graphic designer working remotely, and she'd found the clay-scented chaos soothing. "Have you thought about reaching out to Kareem?" Rami asked her one afternoon. Rain tapped against the windows again. It had been a wet season. Layla looked up from her sketch of the city skyline. "Every day. But what would I say? Sorry I destroyed your life because I'm an idiot who doesn't understand how love works? Maybe start with just, 'I'm sorry,' and see where it goes. What if he's moved on? What if he's happy without me? Then you'll know, and you can work on being happy for him. But not knowing keeps you stuck. Trust me, uncertainty is heavier than any answer." Layla was quiet for a long time. "You're right. I hate it, but you're right." That evening, alone in his studio, Rami found himself thinking about a moment from early in his relationship with Noor. They had been together maybe 4 months. He'd invited her to dinner at his place, attempting to cook his mother's recipe for makluba, the upside-down rice dish that required more patience than he possessed. He had burned the bottom layer, the rice had stuck to the pot, the chicken was overcooked. He had stood there defeated, ready to apologize for the disaster. But Noor had laughed, not at him, but with genuine delight. She'd said, "This is perfect! We can eat it straight from the pot. More authentic that way." They had sat on their floor, the failed pot between them, and she'd told him about learning to cook with her mother, how her mother had cried the first time she made makluba after the divorce, salt tears mixing with the seasoning. How food had become both comfort and battlefield. "I love that you tried," Noor had said, her fingers sticky with rice. "My father never cooked, said it was beneath him. But you're sitting here on the floor eating burned rice with me like it's the best meal in the world." "It is, because you're here." She'd kissed him then, tasting like cumin and cardamom, and he'd known with absolute certainty that he wanted to share burned meals and perfect ones with her as long as she'd let him. Now, weeks after her cancellation, he pulled out his phone and typed a longer message than usual. "I was thinking about the night I burned the makluba, how you made disaster feel like celebration. I want you to know there's no timeline on this. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready to sit at a table again, I'll be there. And if you're never ready for Thursday dinners, we'll find new traditions. Maybe Sunday breakfasts or Tuesday midnight snacks. The day doesn't matter. You do." He hit send before he could overthink it. Her response came 10 minutes later. "I'm coming to see you tomorrow, not to fix everything, but to start. Is that okay?" Rami, more than okay. He looked at his sculpture, the reaching hand, the leaning figure, the charged space between them. Tomorrow that space would begin to close, not through force, but through choice, through two people brave enough to stand in their own healing and reach anyway. He picked up his tools and added one final detail. The suggestion of light between the figure's hands, implying that even in reaching across distance, something luminous could exist in the gap.
Thursday arrived wrapped in that particular quality of autumn light, golden and gentle, turning everything it touched into something worth remembering. Rami spent the morning cleaning his studio with unusual care, moving clay dust and scattered tools into organized chaos. He wasn't nervous. That surprised him, just quietly certain that whatever came next, they'd navigate it together. Noor arrived at 4 in the afternoon carrying 2 canvas bags that clinked with glass bottles and rustled with ingredients. She stood in his doorway looking different somehow. Not physically changed, but present in a way she hadn't been before. Like she'd set down something heavy and her spine had remembered how to straighten. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They stood there smiling at each other like fools until Rami stepped back and gestured her inside. "I thought we could cook together," Noor said, setting the bags on his counter. "Instead of ordering, instead of one person serving the other, just making something together." "I love that idea." She unpacked ingredients for fattoush salad and grilled chicken, for rice with toasted almonds, for a lemon cake she'd baked that morning. "I've been cooking a lot lately. Dr. Haddad suggested it. reclaiming the table, making new food memories. They worked side by side in his small kitchen, shoulders occasionally brushing. Rami chopped cucumbers while Noor whisked the salad dressing. She told him about her sessions, about the homework assignments that involved eating alone without distractions, about learning to sit with discomfort instead of fleeing from it. The hardest part, she said, squeezing lemon juice over the chicken, was admitting that my father's leaving had nothing to do with me, that 9-year-old Noor wasn't responsible for his choices, that I've been carrying his shame like it was mine. Rami set down his knife and turned to face her. You know what I see when I look at you? What? Someone brave enough to name her wounds, brave enough to sit in a therapist's office and dig through painful memories, brave enough to come back here and try again. He touched your cheek gently. That's not broken. That's extraordinary. Her eyes filled but didn't overflow. I was so scared you'd be angry, that my mess would be too much. Noor, everyone's a mess. I'm a mess. I've spent 2 years in therapy learning how not to be my father. The difference is whether we work on it or pretend it doesn't exist. I love you. I should have told you what I was going through instead of disappearing. You told me when you could. That's enough. The doorbell rang, breaking the moment. Rami frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. He opened the door to find Layla holding a bottle of wine and looking slightly embarrassed. I know this is probably weird timing, but I wanted to thank you. I reached out to Kareem. We're having coffee tomorrow to talk. And I thought maybe I should meet the woman who inspired this sculpture journey you're on. Noor appeared behind Rami. Curious. You must be Layla. Rami mentioned you've been visiting. I hope that's okay. I delivered your letter and accidentally became invested in how this story ends. Layla offered the wine bottle. I can leave. Stay, Noor said immediately. Please, anyone who walked through rain to deliver food deserves cake. They set the table together, the three of them, conversation flowing easier than expected. Layla told stories about her design work, about clients who wanted everything more impactful, without explaining what that meant. Noor talked about her accounting firm, about the satisfaction of making numbers tell coherent stories. It's like solving puzzles, she said, serving the salad, finding where the pieces fit, making sense of chaos. That's what I love about clay. It starts as formless mud and becomes something specific, something with intention. They ate slowly, without rush or pressure. At one point, Noor's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. Rami noticed, but didn't comment, just continued talking about the gallery's interest in his new sculpture, giving her space to breathe through the moment. Layla caught it too, and smoothly steered the conversation to a story about a disastrous client meeting that involved a spilled coffee and an accidentally sent email. By the time she finished, Noor was laughing, her shoulders relaxed again. After the meal, after Layla had left for promises to visit again soon, Noor and Rami stood at his window watching the city settle into evening. The old quarter's lights created constellations in stone and glass. I can't promise I won't get scared again, Noor said quietly. Healing isn't a straight line. I know. But I'm learning. Learning that Thursday is just Thursday. That sitting at a table with you doesn't mean history has to repeat itself. Rami wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin resting on her shoulder. We don't have to do Thursday dinners if they're too hard. We can create new traditions, anything you want. No. She turned in his arms to face him. I want Thursdays. I want to reclaim them. Maybe not every single one, but most of them. I want to prove to that 9-year-old girl that tables can hold love that stays, that not everyone leaves when the food gets cold. Then that's what we'll do. She kissed him then, soft and certain, tasting like lemon and new beginnings. His hand settled at her waist, thumb brushing the small of her back in slow circles. She deepened the kiss, fingers threading through his hair, pulling him closer until there was no space between them, just breath and warmth, and the promise of choosing each other again. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Noor smiled against his lips. I missed this. Missed you. I'm right here, he murmured, pressing kisses to her temple, her cheek, the corner of her mouth. Always. They stood there as darkness completed its descent, the city twinkling like captured stars beyond the window. Somewhere in the studio, the sculpture of two figures reaching across space waited patiently, a testament to the courage of staying separate long enough to heal, then choosing to reach again anyway. And next Thursday, they'd sit at that table together. Not perfectly healed, healing wasn't about perfection, but present. Choosing each other with clear eyes and brave hearts. Building new memories that tasted like lemon cake and forgiveness, like trust and time and love that stays even when someone needs to say they can't show up. Because that's what healthy love looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to face it together. Not demanding presence, but trusting return. Not caging each other, but giving wings and believing in the choice to come home. The food would get cold sometimes, someone would need space. Thursday might be hard again. But they'd keep setting the table anyway, keep reaching across the gap, keep proving that love doesn't have to roar to be real. Sometimes it just hums softly, steady and warm, like sunlight through curtains on an ordinary Thursday evening.